This is a short video on the topic of production management, production planning. We want to just look across some quite important ideas about production planning, but we're not going to get into a lot of detail here. There are many classes on this topic available on the course, and you should consult each of those to get a greater insight into specific areas. So let's start by just getting an overview of production planning. First of all, why aggregate planning is necessary. Aggregate planning means planning in total. Why we should tot up all of the various plans and try to get an overall view of the planning situation within a business. First of all, fully load facilities and minimize overloading and underloading. So that statement has really three parts to it. One, to fully load facilities, in other words, to optimize the usage of facilities, be it machinery, floor space, whatever it is. They should be fully loaded and working optimally. Then, with that as the capacity limit, then try to decide what is overloading and what is underloading, what is trying to do too much, and then minimize overloading, trying to reduce it down to the optimal level. And likewise, if there is spare capacity within the plant, try to utilize that. So try to minimize underloading, trying to bring it back up to the optimum. So in the usage of plant, machinery, space, the resources of the business, in the usage of those, it's important to try and have some idea about what is optimal, what is the reasonable working level, and try to aim for that, thereby minimizing underloading and overloading. Underloading, not using the facilities as much as they could, and underloading, overloading, I should say, is using them too much, trying to squeeze too much out of it, leading to breakdowns, leading to frustration, leading to bottlenecks in production. Underloading is when we underutilize the resources. So it's trying to get a balance between those two competing forces. Make sure enough capacity is available to satisfy the expected demand. It's important that customers are not frustrated or left waiting for the product. The image of the business is at stake. If the business produces enough to satisfy the customers in a timely manner, then the business will have an enhanced reputation. If it, however, is late in delivery or it experiences problems in delivery, the customers may go elsewhere, and over a period of time the business will develop a bad name in the marketplace, which does not augur well for the long-term future of that business. Plan for the orderly and systematic change of production capacity to meet the peaks and valleys of expected customer demand. I think it's reasonable to say that customer demand may not be consistent or flat-lined. It may have ups and downs. It may have peaks when there's a lot of demand and troughs when there's very little. The customer demand has fallen off, and the business can't just scale up and scale down. That would not be perhaps economic. Bringing machines on, turning the machines off, retooling the machines. The labour force working in the business will have jobs one day, not jobs next week, jobs the following week. They become frustrated and leave. The business can't just vary its production according to customer demand. They may have to have a smooth, continuous production plan. But it's trying to work out what is the level that they should produce, so that when customer demand is low, the company is producing for stock. When demand picks up, they're able to meet that demand out of stock from the stores. But there's a problem there in calculating what exactly is the optimum. get the most output for the amount of resources available. It's always the case that businesses try to optimize in their use of resources, try to get the maximum out of what they're doing, try to use their resources in a manner which will enable them to minimize costs, produce the product competitively, enable competitive pricing in the market so that the business is able to continue. So they're trying to use the resources efficiently. They're trying to configure their resources in a manner which enables them to use them efficiently, to deploy their resources throughout the organization in an efficient manner, and thereby reduce costs and build up a good reputation in the marketplace for competitiveness and good quality. Now the inputs. Well, a forecast of aggregate demand covering the selected planning horizon would be useful, but it is a forecast, and forecasts can be wrong. Forecasts may be based on market surveys or focus groups or some sort of feedback from the marketing department, but there is no necessity, there is no imperative that says that that feedback is correct. So the problem the business has is if it follows the research, then it may go in the wrong direction. The research may be erroneous. The research may be wrong. It may be biased in various ways. So a forecast of aggregate demand nonetheless is an indicator, and it really does fall to the marketing department to try and pick up the sentiments in the market, customer sentiments towards the product, towards disposable income, towards their requirements, and try to feed that back to the organization so the organization has some idea about what to produce, the quantities to produce in the next, let's say, 6 months or 18 months. The alternative means available to adjust short to medium term capacity, and to what extent each alternative could impact capacity and the related costs. It's important that the business is able to switch over from perhaps one configuration, production configuration, to a different one. They need to be able to step up production from time to time, and at other times perhaps cut it back, trying to find out what the trends in the market are and trying to match their productive capacity to those trends. Having said that, as I said in point number 1, it is notoriously difficult to try and work out what the trends are until it actually happens. So we're good at analysing historic costs, but we're very bad at looking into the future, which should be fairly obvious. We can't see the future. It's what one economist says is it's unknowable. The future, we can't know it. We can get some insights, but it's difficult for production planners to finely tune their resources and their output levels and their plans to the future demands of customers, because we can't tell precisely what the future demand of customers will be. The current status of the system in terms of workforce level, inventory level and production rate. Well, that should be within the scope of the organisation. You should be able to say what the workforce is at the moment, what the skills and competencies are, how many of the workforce are in place, what the current inventory level is, what's been held in stores, and how much are they capable of producing given the current endowments of capital. So what are they able to produce? So they're able to talk about what is now, but looking forward, looking into the future, that is the problem. So they may wish to optimize the use of resources now and produce for stock, put it into the stores. There again, it may be the case that if they produce for stock, put it into the stores, Uh, there won't be a demand in the future. Customers will turn against the product, in which case everything produced and put into stores will be wasted. There are high risks in running a business, and this is one of them. Now, the production plan, well, contains aggregate decisions for each period in the planning horizon, and it does this about the work level. So it tries to look at the planning horizon, say the next 6 months, and then it tries to work out what workforce will the business need, what skills, what competencies, what should they be able to do, what training will be required, so what resources are available to take on the extra workforce. Or it may be, given the perception of the future, given what they believe is going to happen in the future, the workforce has to be scaled back, in which case there may be redundancy payments and all of the traumas of removing people from the workplace, which is not a happy situation. So there are issues here in looking at the aggregate decisions for each planning horizon, the next 6 months or the next year or the next 5 years. I mean, how anyone can imagine what demand will be like in 5 years' time is difficult to say. But businesses have to plan. They have to have some sort of plan, which may be a rolling plan, maybe one which has been updated on a regular basis, but nonetheless there should be some sort of plan. There's also an inventory level. They should plan about that. How much stock should the stores hold? What's the ideal stock holding? Again, it'll be based on estimated future demand for the product. It'll also be based on the productive capacity of the business and how much extra capacity can be brought online should the need arise. But there should be some idea of how much inventory to hold. What's the ideal amount given what they can estimate what's going on in the economy, what's going on in the market. How much can be produced in a given time period? What's the capacity of the machines and of the workforce? So if there was a surge in demand, could it be met from stocks out of the stores, or could the productive capacity of the business be brought to bear to plug any gap? Can it be adjusted? Can it be scaled up to meet a surge in demand if one were to happen? So what's the production rate? And this should be known to the management. They should try to work this one out and realize that if this happens, in this eventuality, then productive capacity can be brought online, perhaps brought online pretty fast. There should also be projected costs if the production plan is implemented. It's no good really just saying to scale up production or bring more machines online or recruit more personnel. There are cost implications. And these cost implications will have an impact on the accounts, on the profitability of the business. So what will the costs of implementing different plans be? So whenever a plan is developed, its associated costs should also be presented, so that it's not just an act of fantasy, it's not just an act of this is what's required. It makes it more real, in a sense, to have the costs published with the plan. So plans should be costed. That's our brief introduction to production management and the production planning system. There are many more videos on this available on the course, and you should try to locate those and see them. They are within the particular modules where it appears on the syllabus. But that's all we're going to deal with here, so let's leave it at that and say thank you for watching.